Welcome. Welcome to Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. Y'all are feisty this morning. I kind of like that. That's all right. So real quick, this is one of those Sundays where we're pretty crowded. It's that time of year, and Roy's here, so Roy always draws a crowd. So if you're able, if you can scoot toward the center and leave the outside for folks who are coming in after the Starbucks run or whatever else they had going on. And I appreciate that. Well, this morning we're going to open with words from Reverend Lindsay Bates, who wrote, "Come, let us worship together. Let us open our minds to the challenge of reason. Open our hearts to the healing of love. Open our lives to the calling of conscience. And open our souls to the comfort of joy. Astonished by the miracle of life, grateful for the gift of fellowship, confident in the power of living faith, we are here gathered. Come, let us worship together." I want to invite Carlos Casillas Lapercio to light our chalice this morning. Carlos was all queued up to do this in December when he turned 8 years old, and we had to bump him, and he was really gracious about that. So come on up, buddy, right there. And as Carlos lights our chalice, if you will read in unison with me our chalice lighting words. We kindle this flame. Carlos, thank you, my friend, and happy birthday. Now, if you will, please stand as you're able, and let's sing together, "Though I May Speak," of Bravest Fire.
Though I may speak with bravest fire and have the gift to all inspire and have not love, my words are vain as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess and striving so my love profess, but not be given by love within, the prophet soon turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control, our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are freed.
Please return to your seats.
Good morning. And welcome to Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. My name is Barbara, and I am the worship associate for today's service. We're so glad you're here because without you, we're not whole. And wholeness in togetherness is miraculous, given the divisions that keep us separate. Let this time together be a way to let go of barriers and walls. It is our work together to honor diversity in all its forms and to welcome everyone without judgment and with curiosity and compassion. Wherever you are on your life's journey, we bid you welcome. Please join me in reciting together our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in friendship. Thus do we covenant. We're always delighted to welcome guests among us, and while it is entirely voluntary, we'd love for you to stand now so we can greet you and also find you after the service. Do we have any guests today? Thank you for letting me call you out like that. And we invite you to return and worship with us again, as each service is unique and special. And if the service brings up things for you and you find you would like to talk to someone after the service, we always have a pastoral care associate available to speak with you privately. And our pastoral care associate today is Mr. Randy Galbraith. There's Randy. And he'll be waiting for you at the front of this sanctuary on your right immediately following the service. Also on your right is a quiet room for use during the service for kids or maybe even adults who need a time out. It is soundproofed and has a speaker so you won't miss anything. Well, this month, we have been exploring the dual theme of authority and leadership. And it's interesting to combine the two topics because UUs tend to challenge any kind of authority. I felt even funny saying the two words together. And that response to authority also makes it tricky for those in leadership roles. Even leadership from the minister sometimes, right? And I was interested to read in our Touchstones journal this month that, quote, while we value personal experience as a source of authority, the sources of Unitarian Universalism in our principles and purposes are also a foundation that inform and ground our collective authority, end quote. Because I have always considered our sources as inspiration to understand them as our collective authority, it gave me pause. I found it deep and even sobering. And so I thought it would be worth quoting the sources in their entirety. And feel free to read along with me if you like. The living tradition which we share draws from many sources. Number one, direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Number two, words and deeds of prophetic women and men which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Number three, wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. 4, Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. And humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science and warn us against idolatries of mind and spirit. And finally, spiritual teachings of earth-centered religions and traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. It couldn't get more relevant to these times, I think, to keep those sources at the top of our hearts. And for me, it's a comfort to do that and to accept these UU sources as a foundation that informs our collective authority, because we're experiencing a time where our larger cultural paradigm surrounding truth and facts seems to be shifting, and it's crazy-making while we're in the thick of it. We're clickbaited by headlines and share them widely without reading the full content. Our daily news cycle can be easily overwhelmed and overturned by an absurd tweet from the White House, which in itself is absurd. But it's news, and so no matter how well a journalist may analyze it and call out the misinformation and lies, the tweets become a reality, and just by virtue of that, draw attention to the untruth, the misinformation. As a result, we retreat to the comfort zone of our like-minded networks and tune the others out. Our sources provide us a solace from the absurdity and help us know that this will pass. Not as soon as we want it to, but yes. Also, art and beauty can have a similar effect. For example, last night, some of us attended the recital titled Much Has Fallen Silent, presented by Michael Lewis, our former pianist, which featured works by 5 Jewish composers, some of whom perished in the Nazi concentration camps. If you missed it last night, you could see the final performance tomorrow night up in Paradise Valley. See me after the service for details. Additionally, hearing stories about personal struggles, such as the ones Reverend Andy and Mr. Roy Tatum will be talking about today, is another way to get and stay grounded and yet rise above the craziness. Welcome. Blessed be.
Thank you, Barbara, for reminding us who we are as Unitarian Universalists. So a man came to his minister, and he said, I need you to pray for my hearing. And so this minister, being very sort of serious and thoughtful minister, she grabbed both sides of his head, put her hands right on his ears, and prayed, God, help this man's hearing. And she took her hands back and said, how's your hearing? And he said, I don't know, it doesn't happen till Tuesday. That's the true no, it's not true. Well, congregational communication is sometimes confusing, but I want to say clearly to you this morning that it's your generosity that makes the mission of this congregation go. And so as the ushers prepare to receive this morning's offering, we do so with deep gratitude for all the many forms of your generosity.
like to invite the children forward for our Time for All Ages story, and then also for our collection if they have a donation. So I have a story for you today about a child who got very involved in helping his mom and then just the people in his community. I don't like this microphone. And it tells us about something that really happened. I don't know that this part really happened, but it tells us about what really happened in April of 2000. Were any of you guys alive in the year 2000? No. We were. Yeah. So, Mama, you guys want to look at the pictures? Mama says, sleep with the angels, Carlitos. And she tucks me in. I'll see you in the morning, I say, and I close my eyes. But while everyone else is sleeping, my mama goes to work. She rides the bus into downtown Los Angeles, where she cleans the tall skyscrapers. And when that sun is ready to come back up and rise, she has to take the bus back home to get to me. When I wake up, Mama is always in the kitchen with my abuelita. What's that mean? Don't you tell. What does it mean? Good job, Grandma. Yeah. We all eat breakfast together, and when I'm ready, Mama walks me to the school bus. Sleep with the angels, Mama, I call out the window. Have a good day at school, she says, and then she gets to go back home to go to bed. One night, Mama said, even though I work full-time as a janitor, you know that I also have to clean houses and wash people's clothes on the weekends. And that means that we don't have much time to spend together, and I can't afford the medicine that Abuelita needs. It isn't fair to work so hard and get paid so little. So today, all of the janitors got together and voted to stop working. We're going to strike. We are not going to clean those offices again until we get the pay raises that we deserve. But Mama, I said, can you do that? She said, you know what? I asked that same question, and all of the janitors shouted, "Sí se puede." Yes, we can. Oh, sorry, you wanted to tell me that. Yes. Mama and all the janitors marched and held rallies and had lots of meetings. Some of the kids in my class had parents on strike, too. And our teacher, Miss Lopez, told us that her grandpa had joined the farm workers' strike in the 1970s. Many people supported the rallies. Mama said a man came out of the building one day, said he hadn't really thought about the janitors who cleaned his office, but he said, seeing you now in the light of day, I can never ignore you again. Miss Lopez, my teacher, joined the rally one day, and the protesters lit candles at night. The next day, I saw my mama on the news. She was making a speech. Hundreds of people were marching behind her. And I got an idea. The next day I talked to my class, and I asked the kids to help me paint signs for the marchers. And Miss Lopez even took us down to the march in central Los Angeles. My sign said, "I love my mama, she's a janitor." I held the sign high as we marched, and the marchers made music, and people on the sidewalk rooted for us. There were thousands of people all around us. And Miss Lopez says, "This is a celebration of courage." After about 3 weeks, the strike was over. The janitors got the respect and the pay raises they deserved. Now my mama smiles a whole lot more. And Abuelita feels better. Mama no longer has to work on weekends, and we can go to the park together. But one morning, I heard Mama on the phone, and she said, "I'll be there." And she told me, "I promised to help other workers, so I'm going to go help the people who clean hotel rooms." I grabbed my sign and I walked out with her. We marched with the workers in front of a hotel, and together we shouted, "Sí se puede." Yes, yes we can. So now we're going to sing the children out to their classrooms and have our Bridge of Love.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Please be seated and remain seated for our song for meditation. You can jump in with any line that you like, but we'll go gradually into them.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
When I breathe
in,
I'll
breathe out.
When I breathe
Breathe in,
I'll
breathe out.
When I breathe
in,
I'll
breathe out.
When I breathe
in,
I'll
breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out.
When I breathe
Breathe in,
I'll breathe
breathe
in.
out.
When I breathe
Breathe
out,
in,
I'll breathe out.
breathe in, breathe out.
As David continues to play, I want to invite us to be still together. In the midst of contentious times, let us find peace within ourselves, between each other. In the midst of busyness, let us remember the power of living in the present. In the midst of struggle and even death, let us summon the life in each of us. Let us sit together now for a moment without words, focusing on the divine in each and every one of us, remembering that we're all siblings, no matter from whence we come. Let us practice silence together. We are about to hear a song that tells a hard story. But let us not turn away. Instead, may this song call us to work for peace and justice. As the songwriter said, let it remind us that freedom never dies.
I'm going to be teaching you a little refrain, so when you hear it, I'd like you to sing with me. We're going to practice it. The words are, freedom never dies, I say, freedom never dies. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. Freedom never dies, I say, freedom never dies. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. Okay? Freedom never dies, I say, freedom never dies. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. Awesome. All right. It happened in Florida, the land of flowers. It was on a Christmas night. Men came stealing through the orange groves, men of hate, care, and dynamite. It was to a little cottage, the family in the name of Moore. At the window hung sprigs of holly, a fine wreath at the door.
It was on a Christmas evening and the family prayers were said. Mother, father, daughter, and grandmother went to bed. The father's name was Harry Moore of the NAACP. He fought for the right for all to live. Black folk must be free. It seems I hear Harry Moore from the earth, his voice still cries. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. Freedom never dies, I say. Freedom never dies. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. It could not be in Jesus' name beneath the bedroom floor. On Christmas night, the killers hid the bomb for Harry Moore. It could not be in Jesus' name the killers took his life and blew his home to pieces and killed his faithful wife. It could not be for the sake of love they did this awful thing. But when the bomb exploded and the Moors died, no hearts were heard to sing. Certainly no angels cried, peace on earth, goodwill to men. But round the world an echo hurled the question, when? When will people in Jesus' name, and when will they by prayer know that each of us has the right to stand up everywhere? When will people, for the sake of peace, the sake of democracy, know that no bomb you can make can stop us from being free? It seems I hear Harry Moore from the earth, his voice still cries. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. Freedom never dies, I say. Freedom never dies. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. So if you see our Harry Moore walking on a Christmas night, don't you fear and run and hide. He has no dynamite. For in his heart is only love for all the human race. All he wants is for each of us to have our rightful place. And this he says, our Harry Moore, as from the grave he cries. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. Freedom never dies, I say. Freedom never dies. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. Freedom never dies, I say. Freedom never dies. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. Freedom never dies, I say. Freedom never dies. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies.
No one was ever convicted of the murders of Harry and Harriet Moore on Christmas night, 1951, though it seems just about everybody knew the KKK members who bombed their home. Harry and Harriet, as the song says, have both been active in the NAACP. In fact, Harry was the state president. But white men who assumed authority over black bodies took their lives. And by allowing them to go free, society itself declared that when white people decided they were free even to kill black people who challenged the status quo. Over the years, progress has certainly been made, but still some white people assume authority over black bodies, and there remains much work to be done. To talk about racial justice in our valley and think about what comes next, I'm pleased to be joined this morning by Roy Tatum, who's president of the East Valley NAACP, among a lot of other things he's up to. Roy, welcome back to VUU. Help me welcome Roy. So
it is, Pat.
Yeah, they knew you were going to be here. It's good to have you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, it's an honor. So we'll just get right into it.
Okay.
You and I have talked a little bit about your work in policing.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you can talk about what you're seeing and just in general what you're up to when it comes to policing.
Okay. Before I get into that, I want to appreciate the song for Harry and Henrietta Moore. I know it existed. I don't know that I've ever heard it sung, though.
Oh, yeah.
To be frank. So I appreciate you invoking their legacy and their memory. And if I may, just take a quick liberty to say that they were vigorously registering people to vote and encouraging people to vote and participate in the political process. And in many counties in the South, the black population was significant. And while they were registering people to vote and the numbers of people where black people were significant, there was a very small number of people registered to vote. So they were making some noise. Mm-hmm. And as you talked about authority, black people were beginning, and this is before Brown versus the Board of Education. This is before Emmett Till. This is 51, as you talked about. Yeah. So they were progressive and revolutionary and brave and courageous down in Florida. So I just want to put that out there, what their work was for those that have never heard about who Harry and Henrietta Moore were.
And when I hear you talk about that, I think of the sort of the sweep of American history.
Yeah.
And there was this window during Reconstruction where we could have been 100 years before they were killed almost. We could have been much further along the path, but assumed authority over black bodies into the Reconstruction era and got us to Jim Crow and all that. So, it's sort of a tragic story.
There's a lot to talk about as it relates to Reconstruction, which I think will tie into the conversation around policing, because Reconstruction only lasted 7 years. You know, what we're talking about is Reconstruction was the period after the Confederate Army conceded and the Union, they were trying to put the Union back together, but now you had 4 million free, enslaved Africans now in society.
Yeah.
So what happens? Now you've been at this point in time, you have enslaved people who were born into slavery. So it's like that's all they knew. Yeah. So to now say you're free, what does that mean? Yeah. Where do you go? Okay, I'm free. All right, now what? My former slave master's now going to be like, oh, yeah, you're free, so let me let you in. No, that didn't happen. Yeah. When the Confederate soldiers returned, to their those that did return to their plantations, and I don't know any better way to say this, but black people caught hell when the Confederate soldiers returned. Mm-hmm. And so to me, this is the precursor to what we see as the treatment of black people when we see law enforcement. Yeah, a lot of times.
Yeah, so talk about that and what's going on in the East Valley and what your work is.
Well, I would say I think, and maybe some people may jump on me for saying this, but I think things have improved given where we were. Given where we were. Many people still don't realize that in 2018, the city of Phoenix was number one in the nation for the use of lethal force at the hands of a police officer, which meant you were more likely to get killed in Phoenix by the police than you were in New York, Los Angeles, Dallas, Chicago, Miami, Seattle, But Phoenix was number one. And areas and the community, the police community is not far removed. I mean, it's tight-knit. So Mesa, you were more likely to be profiled in Mesa, Arizona, than you would be Baltimore, Maryland, or even Ferguson. So they didn't like me when we presented that, and that made it into the USA Today. It's true. But the reality was it forced a conversation. Many people will say, why now? Why bring all this up now? We're making progress. We're getting along. We are, aren't things better, as a society? And I think, when you really take an honest look at society, you can say things are better as there are no colored people only signs or whites only signs but at the same time, this is my generation, our generation, may be the first generation to be able to address white supremacy and injustice, racial injustice, without direct physical retribution and consequence.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Like, my parents and your parents knew segregation at some point in time, whether it was segregated schools or segregated buses, but I never knew that. So I'm entitled now, I mean, I'm sorry. I grew up in an area where it was pretty diverse. So I don't know what it's like to be discriminated against overtly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when I see, so many of us now, when we see injustice, when we see like blatant, like right now there's a young man or a couple of young men who have dreadlocks, who are high school seniors, who are being denied graduating. Like they completed classes, like they made grades. I don't know what their grades were, but nonetheless, they qualified to graduate, but because of their hair, they're being refused or denied to participate in the graduation celebration. That's discrimination.
Yeah, so how do you see that? Do you see that as, I think of it as policing black bodies. I mean, that's sort of how I think, and assuming that the sort of standards that we've had for young white men forever should just be lifted on to people of color. I wonder how you see that issue.
Well, I will say this.
These aren't the questions I told you I was going to ask you.
I know, but it's fine. We're letting the spirit move. But what we've seen a double standard. Yeah. We've seen a double standard in society. I can give a personal anecdote to this, a story to this. At some point in time, I mean, I played sports and I was pretty good athletically, and everybody was like, you got a 2.5 GPA, which is like a C+, so to speak. And that's all they said to us was, you got a 2.5, you got 2.5. And so and this is high school, and so as colleges now begin to look at me to say, hey, we want you to come to our college, play football, and I'm going on these recruiting trips, I'm going to these campuses. And then, I mean, it's fun until you sit down with the college academic, counselor or advisor, and they're going over your grades, and they say, well, we require you to have a 3.0, and some of us had 2.5 on the dot. I probably had like a 2.8, and I said, man, I want to go to this college, or I'm looking to go to college. So I honestly started taking my school seriously and started reading and really started applying myself, if I may say that. But and there was this one semester, my senior year, there was an article that came out around athletes with good grades, and I was like number 2 on the list with a 3.7. And I'm saying this to say, after that, there were teachers that accused me of cheating. I'm serious. This is a true story. And I mean, you know, I'm young and I'm cocky. I didn't care. I didn't know I was being discriminated against. So some teachers made me take tests in front of them, like right there, like moved me to the front, and I'm, you know, like doing it. Here you go. You know, and I walk out of class like George Jefferson. Because, and some of them couldn't believe it, you know, because it was like the expectation was just to excel on the athletic field, but only minimum in the classroom. My point, I'm saying that to say, whatever expectations people have of you, that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And so when if the police think that we're the boys in the hood or the menace of society, you know, or gangbangers, drug dealers, and rappers, so to speak, and not to say that rappers are bad. Some rappers come from amazing families and, you know, incredible backgrounds. They just explain what's going on in the hood, so to speak. So if that's what they're expecting, that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And so therefore, they've weaponized black skin.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I told that story all the way just to say the expectation sometimes is low or nefarious, and that's what you see. You know, like if, for instance, I was watching, what was the movie? Django Unchained.
Yeah.
You know, and at that time, I mean, in Quentin Tarantino, I love Quentin Tarantino's work because it's raw. But there was like, I mean, for all intents and purposes, only like one good white man in the movie. You know, so if you're being real, if we were to take the flip side of that and to say all white men or all white people were racist, you know what I'm saying? Then, you know, you got to think about that. So all black people, no, all black people aren't thugs, and all white people aren't racist.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's hard for people to hold in their minds diversity within diversity within diversity, and you can't. The blanket assumptions that we make based on where you were raised, or the color of your skin, or whatever, usually don't hold.
Right.
Yeah. So, I want to ask you, what can a room full of people who are big-hearted and really interested in making things better, what can they do when it comes to racism and policing, particularly in the East Valley, where most of us live?
What I'd like to say first, I want to address that. But what came to me, and as I'm thinking about what you wanted to talk about, I think when addressing white supremacy, you've got to address the roots of it. You got to address the family structure of it. Like white supremacy and white racism was a family affair. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like the Ku Klux Klan were not just these crazy, you know, backwards, toothless white people. You know, the Ku Klux Klan were bankers, lawyers, politicians, sheriffs, police, teachers. You know, they wore hoods so you couldn't tell who they were, so they could go out and, you know, teach your children tomorrow, so to speak.
Yeah.
So my point is, if there was a night ride, Harry and Henrietta Moore, obviously their home was bombed. If you didn't catch the song, their home was bombed on Christmas night.
Yeah.
So any woman in here, if your man's leaving in the middle of the night on Christmas night, where's he going? I mean, you get what I'm saying? So it's a family affair. You know where he's going. You know where he's going.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You know what he's like, yeah, you know, it's around 11, I gotta go. Like, Christmas, where you going? You know what he's doing. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So to act oblivious. So for people to say, I can't believe that this is the country that we live in. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, what you think has been happening? And so, and I make light of that, but I got to make light of it because it's heavy to think that that's the reality of where we are. That's the reality of the country. That's the reality of how you know, unfortunately, we're seeing a resurgence of white supremacy and white supremacist ideologies kick back up in the East Valley in particular. Because, and why? Why? Is it because population growth? Is it because populations are changing? Is it because, there's more people, there's being held some accountability now? And I think many white people don't understand what their role is at this point in time, given the history. You can't do anything to change the history. Here's my thing. The history is the history. But when you hear something that's not right. When you see somebody going down the wrong road. When things kind of go too far. Like, I know growing up, I had friends that liked to fight. They liked to start stuff. And I don't know why, but they just enjoyed that sometimes, disrupting, in a negative way. And whenever they got to that point, it's like, okay, no, you got to go. Stop. It's time to, because you knew where that was going. And so now, I don't know how the racist conversations start. I don't know. I've never been in one,
No, that surprises me.
But my point is, many times, it was black success that warranted or that generated the white rage. Mm-hmm. It was like, this black man got this land. Why he got that land? Why he got that tractor? Why does he have that donkey? Or why does he have a new car? It's like, what? So to me, that's something they got to check. You got to check in yourself.
Well, and that's what I mean when I talk about the assumption of authority over black bodies that white people in some ways are acculturated to assume in our society that there's a book, Hochschild, I think is the name of the author, who talks about the last election, and she sort of sees a line of white people who were sort of going up the hill, and the good stuff was at the end of that hill, and they're standing in line to go over that hill and get the good stuff. And around them come successful black families, the Obamas, for example, and others. And the assumption of the white people in that line to get the good stuff was, hey, we were first in line. And why should people of color be allowed to pass us? I think that that's sort of the shameful heritage, really, of the Civil War and slavery, and it just continues into today.
Yeah. I think about, as you were telling the story of the children, the children's story, and it said, my mother's a janitor, and I love her. Made me think about my grandmother, because my grandmother served, she worked in the cafeteria at Old Dominion University, and, low wages, but a modest lifestyle, but good people. And, the thing is, when we talk about the role, I also want to address the role of capitalism and materialism. And there are some people that have come to America, land of opportunity, particularly your European immigrant that will come to America, the land of opportunity, right? And all these stories that come out about how you can make yourself anything you want to be. So what's the reason for a poor white person? So when a white person finds themselves poor or needy or without, and they see a black, and they know that this is the land of opportunity, and it seems like when they see a black person progressing, it's like, hold on, they're beneath me. Mm-hmm. And that's the philosophy. I mean, people can say, oh, that's not how I think. It's not about how you think. It's about the philosophy that was, that grew America. And second-class citizens. And so when you see a second-class citizen in a Cadillac, it's like, oh, it makes you you got to reevaluate now. Like, yeah. Well, maybe they're not second-class citizens. How they got a Cadillac and I got an old Dodge?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one of the challenges in that situation is if people can have a conversation partner who doesn't drive them further into that opinion. You know what I mean? Who says, tell me why you think that. That's interesting. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but I just think that right now we're sort of hollering at each other from our different positions. And what really needs to happen, I think, is conversations between people who really want to change and people who want things to get better.
I think that's absolutely correct. I remember having a conversation and a person, with a white male, and he was telling me how he was not racist and how he knew, he talked about the music that he listened to, and some of his favorite movies had black actors and his favorite athletes, and I'm like, okay. All right. But then I just simply said, how many black people have you had dinner with at your house? It went just like that.
Yeah.
And it made them think, And I'm like, so yeah, you have this admiration for, and most of us, I mean, of course, I love Michael Jordan. Who doesn't love Michael Jordan? Unless you were like a Detroit Pistons or Indiana Pacers.
Well, the truth is hard sometimes.
But I mean, my point is like, of course, the best of us in any genre, you're like, oh yeah, I'm a fan too, right? But that common person, I believe as Jesus said, is how you treat the least of these, So, it's just about checking yourself on a micro level. Of course, you're gonna love the high level artist, actor, sports athlete. But what about if you've got a black person living in your community and you've never said hi or never, extended yourself to them? Then what's that about?
Wait, are you telling me it's not enough just to read Ta-Nehisi Coates?
No, not according to Cornel West.
Yeah, I hear you.
Dr. West, Dr. West is one of my mentors.
Yeah.
So I want you to read Dr. West.
Yeah,
I like Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yeah.
I don't want to start nothing.
So when we have lunch together, we have an hour, or sometimes 90 minutes, but we don't have that this morning.
Right.
So
okay. Right.
I'm going to let you pick the last topic. Do you want to talk about reparations, or do you want to talk about Dr. King's legacy?
Oh, we got to talk about Dr. King because I think reparations goes into that.
Okay.
As we celebrate Dr. King's 91st birthday, January 15th, 2020, unfortunately, there's been a ton of commercialization and a watered down version of Dr. King's message. Meaning, when you ask an average everyday person what they know about Martin Luther King, they'll immediately go to "I Have a Dream," which was 1963. And even in the "I Have a Dream" speech, there's a portion in there where Dr. King says, "America has given the Negro a bad check." It's like, whoa.
And the rest of that is what we're coming to collect on?
We're coming to collect. Yeah. Meaning that he understood that there were a number of government-funded programs that were supporting the growth of Caucasian Americans for land. I mean, we're talking about the Homestead Act, to where you could go and travel and get land from the government. You can get financial support to farm the land. You can get education funded by the government to learn how to farm. And if it didn't work out, you can get some extension on some loans until your land became productive. All government funded. And all in the government promised, to free slaves back to the Reconstruction, at least 40 acres and a mule, under Proposition 15, William Tecumseh Sherman. I'm just giving y'all that because that's in case somebody doesn't believe me. You can look it up. And that never came to fruition, so to speak. And so Dr. King, in his last years, Dr. King was a disruptor from the beginning. And a lot of people don't realize that. He wasn't just some little peaceful man that wanted everybody to get along. Yes, he believed in nonviolent protest and nonviolent resistance, but it was to prove a point. as a strategy and a tactic. But in the latter years of his life, he went from civil rights to a peace activist, meaning he was against the war in Vietnam, and many people believe that that was the position that ultimately cost him his life. And then he moved over to economic justice. And I believe, and many people believe, that Dr. King's philosophy of truly, fully integrating was shifting to, look, if we can't get along, if this is going to continue to be violent for black people, let us get enough economic resources to go do our own thing or build our own communities. Dr. King was shifting to that. And so Dr. King was talking about the guaranteed annual income, because even then, in the 60s, jobs were shifting. Manual labor wasn't needed as much as technology advanced. So Dr. King was revolutionary in his views on economics and on his views on being anti-war. And Dr. King created enemies. I believe Dr. King created more enemies than he knew he was creating with the military and industrial complex, and also in the halls of power of small business and big business. Because in his last speech, Dr. King said, don't buy Wonder Bread, Seal Test Milk, and Coca-Cola. The owner of Coca-Cola, the CEO of Coca-Cola at the time, was the richest man in Georgia. You know, so and everybody heard this, and people were ready to mobilize on these nationwide boycotts. And Dr. King was about to, I think he was on to great things with the Poor People's Campaign by uniting poor people. And this was across color lines. This wasn't just black poor people. This was white poor people, Latino poor people, because he was also reaching out to Cesar Chavez.
Yeah, so at the end, King's vision is more expansive and inclusive, and it's something that we can tap into, whether it's economic or racial justice alone or whatever. Well, thank you, Roy, for being here. And
thank you.
Can you hang out after in case folks want to talk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I got some
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you all.
Well, since you're standing, let's sing together, Guide My Feet While I Run This Race.
While I run
done now? Do we need to take a vote? Well, please join me in reading in unison as Barbara extinguishes our chalice. Though we
extinguish the chalice, our connection to each other and this community remains. May its light guide us this week as we walk the path of justice, speak words of love, and fill our world with compassion until we meet again.
And now may life bless you and keep you. May the Spirit make its face to shine on you and be gracious unto you. May the universe pour out the fullness of its blessings on you and bring you peace. Go in peace, dear friends. Amen.
Amen.
Nice job with your